Hola a todos, how we doing? Welcome to Module 5, Authority. Authority is a good one. You saw my ranking from last week in the video. I'm a big fan of authority. I have a lot to say about authority. But when I was, not but, it's kind of funny. I saw reading your topic talks that you guys are picking up on the main theme here. These weapons of influence are mental shortcuts. They are particularly effective in scenarios of uncertainty. I have more to say about this, and I'm going to talk about this book again and again and again, but we'll get to that. Really enjoyed the wide variety of different topical areas. A couple about leadership. I'm going to start off with those. We did some B2B. We did social media. We did politics, fashion, doctors, police. A lot of police ones. We were into that. So let's do leadership first. Okay? How can a leader balance authority and approachability? Now, I believe this is from Linda, who's one of my students that was tortured by me in the spring semester. When we talked about leadership, we talked about two different types of leadership: Theory X and Theory Y. Now, Theory X leaders are generals. You don't question the general. You know, the general says jump, and you respond, how high? Theory Y leaders are coaches, mentors, teachers, pedagogues. They are servant leaders. It's the complete polar opposite of what a Theory X leader is. So, I don't see authority and approachability being polar opposites. Because a Theory Y leader, who is by definition more approachable, can still command lots of authority. Now, I'm going to talk more to this point when I get to... I'll do both of these at the same time. Okay? So, Theory X leaders have this I'm in charge mentality. Just because I may have the title, just because I'm in charge, doesn't necessarily mean someone is going to follow me just because I am the leader. You know, it's almost like that authority must be earned. You need to demonstrate the ability, the skills that gives you authority for others to follow you. You must talk the talk and walk the walk. You know, just because you're in charge, just because you have the title, doesn't mean anyone's going to listen to you. Right? How can a follower of those positions of authority best challenge a difficult authoritarian? This one, believe it or not, has a relatively easy response. If you have a Theory X leader and you want to challenge them, don't challenge them. Make the idea theirs so they can take all the credit for it. If you want to challenge them and unseat them, that's a whole different ballgame. But if you just have a really good idea that you want implemented and you're dealing with a Theory X leader, just make it their idea. If you tell them you're going to make them look smart, if you're going to tell them that they're going to make the organization better, they'll steal your idea and take all the credit. That's how you do it. So here's this leadership flaw I'm in charge. Despite blind obedience to authority, we tend to, even in individualistic cultures like the United States, we tend to bow to the altar of authority. We really do. We really do. We do it often. I mean, in more collectivist societies, the effect is even stronger. But even in individualistic societies, like the US, the UK, Australia, Canada, we still bow to the altar of authority. It is highly, highly effective. Despite blind obedience, it may be a big mistake. Obedience to authority can reduce the time, since some situations don't have enough time to discuss or think of a perfect way. Under the situation, how do you deal with the time management? Well, I had this one up top because regardless of whether you think about it as time management, and we have another set of questions from a different topic talk related to this. I want to rewind back to this book. Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. Here's the Nobel Prize economist. This is a very thick book. I really love this book. I have, 50 pages of notes from this thing. I'm not kidding you. I read this book and had no idea what the hell was going on. And then I got the book on CD and listened to it on my commute going to and from school. And perhaps it was the second time going through. Perhaps because it was the author's voice, it sunk in more. I don't know if I can recommend it to you. Let's put it that way. Maybe the best thing for you to do is go to Wikipedia and read the 1,000 word write-up on it, and that might be helpful. But broadly speaking, this is how the brain works. There are two systems. Call them System 1 and call them System 2. System 1 is the automatic system, which means shortcuts, heuristics, rule of thumb. When you're driving a car, you don't think about driving a car. It's kind of automatic. It happens more in the subconscious level. You just kind of do it, which is why you can sing a song while you're driving the car, or you can do other things while you're driving it. You can multitask, basically. All right. The reflective system, this is the thinking system, okay? When you're taking the GMAT or you're taking the SAT exam, you're not using the automatic system. You're using the reflective system. When you are writing your write-up for your made to stick book, you are going to be using the reflective system. The reflective system takes significant amount of power and energy to run. Calorie, however you want to define that. It makes you tired. The brain does not like to use the reflective system. It always tries to shift to the automatic system as much as possible. When we are uncertain, or we don't know, or we're in time pressure, or we're tired, we always go for the automatic system, which is where all these flaws, well, they're not flaws, but all these persuasion techniques are more effective. Let me hit pause for 1 second. So both of these books, which have been on my reading lists, okay, but Nudge, Richard Thaler, and his latest book is on my reading list, and Dan Ariely, Predictably Irrational, The Hidden Forces That Shape Our Decisions. Both of these books operate in the automatic system, where you are more prone to mental shortcuts and persuasion techniques. So, really, you can build a defense system for all of these techniques, both in Made to Stick and in Influence, Cialdini, by thinking. Push your brain into the reflective system 2, and then all of these blind obedience to authority, liking, similarity, all of these things lose their effectiveness. Why do you think it might be difficult for some people who are in roles of authority to exercise power? Well, power and authority are not the same thing. Theory X leaders use authority and power as one of the same. Theory Y leaders think that authority and power are different things. Theory X leaders use power to coerce, to force you to do something. I'm the leader, I'm in charge, do this or be fired. That's authority and power. A Theory Y leader won't do that. A Theory Y leader, will not resort to power just to get something done. Do you think certain personality types are just more prone to being naturally assume the role of power and authority? There are certain personality types that do enjoy power and use it to its effectiveness. That may or may not be a good thing. There are certain personality types that are more prone to Theory X leadership styles and Theory Y leadership styles. There are the big 5 factors of personality. You can go to Wikipedia on that, and you'll easily be able to tell the difference on those big 5 if you think about, well, let me think of these big 5, and how would a Theory X person be strong or weak on any of these big 5 versus a servant leader, a Theory Y person. In today's digital age, love the fact that someone is talking about social media and authority. I have a lot to say about this. In today's digital age, where everyone has a voice and a platform to express it, is it easier or more difficult for people to present themselves as authority figures? Alrighty. Now, in the past, we lived in a top-down world. The top-down world for argument's sake, let's say 2001 to 2004 was like the emergence where the shift started to happen from the top-down world to the bottom-up world. Prior to, say, 2001 to 2004, in the top-down world, it was easier for us to identify authority figures. They were in authority publications. CNN, Time, Businessweek, Fortune, Forbes, New York Times. If someone was in one of those publications, it was so much easier to give them the authority to be an expert. I think in the bottom-up world, where we all have the tools such as Twitter and Periscope and LinkedIn and insert next platform here, Medium, I think it is more difficult for someone to present themselves as an authority figure, because it's the leveling of the ways to be granted authorship. I mean, if the New York Times called you an authority, you were an authority. That was the end of the discussion, right? But in today's world, when everybody's got Medium and everybody's got Periscope and everybody's got a blog and everybody's got a podcast, then guess what? Deciding who is an authority or not now goes to the onus of the crowd. And the crowd has to decide who's an authority. I think it's much more muddled and much more difficult for people to present themselves as authority figures today versus it was in the past. Therefore, in today, we are seeing more of these techniques to try for people to use these techniques to distinguish themselves from other people on Medium, other podcasts, other bloggers. Has there been a more contemporary version of the Milgram experiment that you're aware of? No. Okay. All PhDs, all researchers, when we every time we do a study that's going to be published in a journal, we have to go to, quote unquote, an ethics board at the university to make sure it's okay for us to run this experiment, to see if it's ethical or not. Well, guess what? This Milgram experiment is always an exemplar in order to get certified to be able to go to the ethics board to be able to run a test. Oh boy. There have been other compliance studies, and there's a lot of compliance studies out there, but nothing to the extent of Milgram's experiment. Nothing. I would be interested to see if there's an increase of compliance participation in a less personal digital world. We still see compliance. In the digital world, we call it a, wait for it, call to action. If you Google blogs call to action, podcast call to action, social media calls to action, you're going to get thousands of articles on how to build an effective call to action. What are the most effective call to action techniques? Cialdini calls them compliance. The social media world calls them calls to action. Same thing. How often does it typically take individuals to recognize authority pressures, persuasion tactics in a situation and be able to logically think through them? Well, some individuals, it takes forever and they never get it. And the reason why is they're operating in System 1, the automatic system, and they never shift to System 2. They don't think, they don't recognize, they just bow to the altar of authority. It's easier, there's no thinking involved, you just do. Usually what happens is the authority figure has to violate the authority in order for someone to knee-jerk themselves out of, the automatic system. And sometimes those symbols of authority, we're going to start talking about police very soon, are just so strong that you never leave the automatic system. Are people in situations of authority able to accurately and timely assess whether their authoritative figure is telling the truth or making an informed decision on something? I think I kind of just answered that same thing here and here. We're good there. Do you think that political candidates in general are able to successfully use authoritative persuasion in their campaigns? This is a very easy response. Yes, 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 yes. Whether we like it or not, political candidates are authority figures. They use their authority to be persuasive. They could be appealing to the base, i.e., Democrats appealing to Democrats because maybe the voter identifies themselves as a Democrat, doesn't know that much about this particular individual that they're hearing a platform from. But guess what? Because they're a Democrat, and they're a registered Democrat, and they're listening to a Democrat, they're going to judge them less critically because they already like them. They're already buying in. They're on the same platform. They're in the same party. Guess what? Automatic system, not that much thinking, complete buy-in, no issues whatsoever with persuasion. That's how it happens. And vice versa. Do you think clothing as a method of authority works in industries where all employees are expected to wear a suit and tie? Okay. It is not an accident I am wearing an ugly Hawaiian t-shirt today, or whatever you want to call this. It's Tommy Bahama. It's not that bad. But guess what? I normally try to wear something with a collar or, at least a golf shirt when I'm recording my videos. I am a professor, or at least I attempt or think that I'm a professor or something along those lines. Who knows? But guess what? Does clothing, when you saw this video start, and you saw that I was wearing a Hawaiian t-shirt, you immediately were kicked into what? I'm curious to see or hear what your thoughts were as soon as you saw this. Some of you would have been like, what? Some of you might not have noticed right away. Now that I'm bringing it up, now, it used to be in the past that authority was in the work environment, Fortune 500. They called IBM Big Blue because they all wore blue suits, and everyone wore a blue suit all the time. Big Blue. We now have different work cultures. It's not Casual Friday anymore. It's who knows whenever. I'd love to see. Outside of Tim Cook, there are some Apple executives, I bet you, I've never seen them in a suit and tie. Ever. Ever. This is Apple, the most valuable company in the world. If you look at Silicon Valley and you look at California, who's wearing suits? Excuse me. To be honest with you, the only, outside of big time management consulting, like PricewaterhouseCoopers, McKinsey, Accenture, maybe in addition to the finance industry, who's wearing suits? Different culture. We're going to talk more about clothing and fashion in a second. Given pharmaceutical companies spend a lot of money to schmooze doctors to push their products, they have to be, by the way, used to be unthrottled, unethical schmoozing. The FDA stepped in the mid-90s when things got out of control, and there are a number of very, very strong regulations of what marketers can and cannot do. Just sidebar comment. Why does Big Pharma need to do any above-the-line marketing? Well, Alex's topic talk here, he was talking about how doctors are so influential to their patients that if doctors are that powerful, why do the pharmaceutical companies have to do any TV ads at all if the doctors are that influential? And it's because the pharma industries have a very hard time getting face-to-face time with the doctors. They have a very hard time once a doctor starts prescribing a particular medicine. The doctor shifts into the System 1 automatic system, doesn't do any System 2 thinking anymore, and they're cognitively locked in and never want to change their prescription preferences. So what do? When the doctor's at home watching the NFL, the doctor sees all pharma ads. But more importantly, they want the consumers like me and you to see the pharmaceutical ads. For us to then go in and pester the doctor. For us to go to their website or do some digging, do a couple Google searches, for us to do a little bit of System 2, so when we go into the doctor, we make a case for something and try to shift the doctor out of System 1. Outside of the auto industry, I think pharma's next in regards to aggregate spending on advertising. Old school top-down advertising. Nowadays, there are many video makers or bloggers who post their styles or their way of living on a website. Celebrities also do live commercials wearing particular brands of advertising. I assume that authority marketing itself is already an industry, using celebrity popularity to broadcast products. After that, celebrities take a profit from providers, or they get paid. Do you think that authority marketing is a new industry? All right. I believe 2 of us in class found this Huffington Post article from a year or 2 back that authority marketing is the new thing. Okay. Authority marketing doesn't exist. This is a buzzword. This is people, I don't know, consultants trying to come up with something new. Look, this book's been out for a very long time. People have been, that Camel ad with the doctors, okay, that happened in the 40s. You know, using celebrities to advertise products it's been happening for hundreds of years. Okay? Directly or indirectly. Directly, clearly, for at least the last 100. I can't say that authority marketing is new by any stretch of the imagination. It's using authority as a technique or a tactic within an advertising or marketing campaign. And we've been doing that forever. Anybody car hunting? Well, if you're looking for a car and you're not going to Consumer Reports, my opinion, you're probably not doing your due diligence. Consumer Reports is a nonprofit organization that takes no advertising whatsoever. Okay? I've been reading them for 20-something years. I think as a first stop for recommendations on what to buy or what not to buy, this is a really, really, really good first stop. Right? Now, did I just give you a very, very strong appeal to authority? That Consumer Reports is the authority, the best and worst automobiles, the April issue that comes out in March every year. I read this thing cover to cover. I'm a car freak, you know. Just love this stuff. Now, to be direct with you, the fact that I've been reading it this long, I can understand Consumer Reports still has biases as well. They still make mistakes. I mean, when it comes to certain product classes, some cars, some consumer electronics, a few other things, I know just as much, if not more, than Consumer Reports. And I can see where they're not going deep enough. But broadly speaking, this is the least biased authority when it comes to good, better, best for products and services. It really is, in my opinion. So that's how authority is used. Now, celebrities, you know, you may like a particular celebrity because of a TV show they're in or a movie they're in. And what happens is because you like that celebrity, your automatic system stays engaged because you already like them to begin with. And because automatic is there, your defense mechanisms or your shift the system to is less likely to kick in. So you'll trust the celebrity more. You'll think less deeply about counter arguments to what he or she is saying. You know, that's how this stuff works. Is it true when a uniformed figure is not in her or her uniform, but the party knows that he, she is a uniformed figure? Will they receive the same amount of respect they receive when they're in uniform? Okay. For example, if you see Derek Jeter in uniform or in street clothes, would he get the same treatment in either case? Derek Jeter, the answer is yes, 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 yes. Okay. Because it's Derek Jeter. You can talk about Derek Jeter as one of the top 25 most influential players in the history of baseball. I'm not a Yankees fan, by the way, for the record. You know, the impact that he's in the modern game, he's top 10 easily. Him, Griffey Jr., you know, Barry Bonds. There's a couple of them. He's one of them. He's one of them. You know, he would get the same respect in uniform or in street clothes. Now, there's some caveats here, too. When it comes to uniform, not all uniforms are treated equally if we're talking about sports, Here's a very interesting example. The Philadelphia Eagles had a safety, and he just really liked to play softball. And, this is a guy that was not like a rookie or anything like that. This was a guy who was a free agent signing from the New York Giants, came over to the Eagles for 2 years. After he left the Eagles, he retired, believe it or not. All these photos and images on Twitter started to appear. He played in softball leagues under a different name, and no one really noticed. There's one guy on his team that knew, which got him on the team. That guy never said anything, and no one ever questioned it. Because football, they're wearing helmets, you really don't see them. It's different. I can even say the same thing for basketball. Because basketball, they're not wearing helmets. They look the same whether they're in the uniform or in their street clothes. Baseball, basketball, no issue. Football, issue. Soccer, no issue. As a matter of fact, for my diehard soccer fans, NYCFC, Andre Pirlo, who is a giant in soccer, that is revered in Italy, where he played for, won World Cups, won league titles, won Champion League titles. One of the things he loves the most about playing for NYCFC is he literally can walk around New York City and no one stops him to take a picture. No one stops to ask him for an autograph. He can just walk into any restaurant, sit down, and have a meal without being bothered. He cannot go anywhere in Italy, sit down, eat a meal with his wife and family, and not be bothered. As more millennials enter the workforce, I feel like a CEO wearing a traditional suit and ties will eventually become obsolete. I think we hit on this already. This topic talk was specifically about Zuckerberg. When Zuckerberg was doing the rounds in New York City for the IPO of Facebook, he wasn't wearing a suit and tie. He wore his same classic hoodie. Would you agree, and would you think how it will impact company and their perceived to investors? Zuckerberg wanted to stay consistent with his brand image. I think it would actually have been ridiculous for him to wear a suit and tie. Because whether he wore a suit and tie or whether he was wearing a hoodie, he didn't have any authority yet. Now that Facebook's a public company, now that Facebook is growing double-digit quarter after quarter, now that Facebook is really a juggernaut, it doesn't make any difference what he has the authority now. It used to be the case that you needed the suit. I don't think you need the suit anymore. I really don't. They're looking for other things of authority, other symbols of authority. By the way, we're talking about symbols of authority. That's what a brand is. A brand is a symbol of authority. We will pay more for Tylenol than we will for the generic CVS version because the Tylenol is a branded symbol of authority. We'll pay more for that. Is there a clear trend over time on the influence of authority nationally and globally? Well, there is a clear trend that authority is highly, highly, highly effectively, domestically and globally. For example, are military personnel more and less inclined to question orders today than it was in the past? All right, I'm going to be perfectly direct here. As much as I read, military and military culture is something I know very, very little about. So I'm not going to go there. I'm inclined to say yes, but I really don't know. I really don't know. I apologize for that. This trend exists. Is it moving in the same direction globally? I don't know what to say here. I'm sorry. Is obedience to authority more likely when there is a threat of punishment? No. Absolutely not. Why? Because if there is a threat of punishment, if there is a threat of consequences, what is easier to shift you out of System 1 to System 2 than punishment or consequences? That is probably the easiest thing to shift you out of System 1 to System 2. Right? So, the threat of punishment makes you think deeper. The more you think, the more you'll have your defenses up against these blind obedience to authority. Do you think parenting today suffers due to the installation of children with a sense of authority, where parents listen to the demands more that they enforce repercussions for bad behavior? What effects will this have when these children interact with authority figures? All right. I don't know anything about military, but being a parent and reading dozens and dozens of parental psychological books, I think this was just a shortcut that parents used in the past. The threat of your dad and a belt, okay, from decades past, that was easier parenting. It wasn't better parenting. Because they made power, authority, and making the children do what the parents wanted to do by force. And believe it or not, that's not the best way to do it. So, in the past, meaning, 2-3 decades ago in the past, there were less, more direct, and simpler symbols of authority. The symbols of authority are wider and more varied today. But guess what? Authority still works. Children still bow to the altar of authority. You just don't have to do it by force. My questions after this section: why would the human mind associate clothing with authority? So, the human mind, we've already talked about how the brain works, System 1 and System 2. Now, clothing is another one of our topics that, if we are uncertain, we need a mental shortcut. And we may bow to the altar of authority, particularly in fashion. I mean, we all make fun. I mean, look at the Zoolander movies. We see the runways. We see what happens in the fashion industry around the world. And you look at some of the stuff and you go, oh my God, what are they thinking? Okay, now, there are many people in on that industry that, because it is insert designer's name here, they don't question it. They immediately celebrate it. I mean, we do this with art, do we not? You look at a painting and you have all these art critics talking about the painting, and we can do the same thing with music. I like Radiohead, and the critics adore Radiohead, but a lot of Radiohead stuff is just so far out there that you really can't listen to it. I mean, you really can't. It's interesting, it's different. You can listen to it once, but there's no real strong desire to listen to that song again. You heard it, and it was kind of dissonant, and you're like, no. But the critics love it. Oh, Radiohead, Tom York, Radiohead. Yeah, I have 4 of their albums, fine. But at the same time, we are listening to the critics. The critics are telling us this is, and we say, okay, Radiohead is the most critically acclaimed band in recent history. music, clothing, art, anywhere we are uncertain or we do not have the expertise, we will use a mental shortcut and we'll bow to the altar of authority. How can individuals like myself know when someone is being genuine and using their authority for good versus their own internal agenda? Ooh, okay. We talked about this more last week, that every one of these techniques, every one of these things, right? These techniques are very powerful, and they could be used for beneficial purposes, and they could be used for manipulative purposes. The short answer is you have to shift to system 2 to think about it. Telemarketers will manipulate you. Salespeople will manipulate you for their own gain. Companies will manipulate you for their own gain. Coworkers at work will manipulate you for their own gain. You have to think. You have to think broadly about, it's sort of like chess. It's not one move. One move influences the next 6. And that's kind of how you have to think about it. So the back of the book, when Cialdini's talking about defenses against the dark arts, he was asked 2 questions. These are the 2 questions you ask yourself to shift yourself from system 1 to system 2. Is this bowing to authority figure truly an expert? The fact that you start thinking about it means you start being less impacted by the shortcut authority ploys. How truthful can we expect this expert to be? These are good. If I answered a knock at the door and a police person was there and the police person asked for access to my house, I would probably let him or her in as well. But 2 or 3 people had this topic talk. Unfortunately, I would probably answer both of the above questions quickly and incorrectly. Do you know of any other additional defenses that I could use to defend against this persuasion technique? Well, I've mentioned this in previous podcasts. And to be honest with you, I think this is the best technique. And your automatic is to never to make a decision right then and there. Never decide something yes, no, within a half a second of thinking about it. Just wait. If you can train yourself not to say either yes or no and wait, even if you wait 10 seconds, wait 5 seconds, just don't do it in 1 second. The fact that you just stop and cognitively lock up will shift you into system 2 automatically, because you're no longer in automatic mode. Right? So if a police person asks to come in, and they ask you to come in, you wouldn't say yes. Stand there and say, well, let me think about this. And give them 10 seconds. Because if it's someone that's trying to be manipulative, they're going to come up with something very quickly to be manipulative. What, you're not going to let me in? I'm a cop. All of a sudden, that would make you feel uncomfortable, and then it's easier for you to say no. But if there's nothing weird about it, if they say, well, would it make you more comfortable if I came back with other police officers for us to do the search together? Well, then that's a signal that, oh, maybe this is on the up and up. And you'd say, yes, I would feel more comfortable if, I had some more documentation. You just walk up to my door. Just avoid knee-jerk yes-no responses. Just don't make a decision. And you shift yourself into system 2, and you start thinking more deeply, and you can avoid some of these quick symbols of authority, bowing to the altar of authority, all of these techniques, to be honest with you. The use of authority figures is still used in advertising today. It always has, it always will. But it seems this has less impact on the general public in today's climate. I disagree, I disagree, I disagree, I disagree, and I disagree. As a matter of fact, I think it is stronger in today's climate than it has been in the past. I really do. We see it more. We see it more by more individuals. It is used more frequently than it has in the past. We have more media than we've used in the past. In today's bottom-up social digital world, I think it has more impact. Do you see the liking method of persuasion by celebrity endorsement as becoming more effective route to persuasion and advertising? Okay. I knew that this was coming. I said it earlier. I'm just going to do a quick repeat. Liking is another technique in this book. All right. Now, I've told you before that liking is not one of my instantaneous ones. Liking happens over time, where authority is almost instantaneous and reciprocity is almost instantaneous and social proof is almost instantaneous. Like a recommendation, literally, is a social proof. Okay? Well, liking used in tandem, and many of these techniques used in tandem increases their effectiveness. So you have a celebrity who you already like, that they're using authority. It is very effective. And to be honest with you, this is, when we talk about the social and digital media world, and you hear all this stuff about influencer marketing or using influencers, i.e., someone who has 8.3 million people following them on YouTube at a YouTube channel. Ooh. That's what this is. That's what this is. That is authority and liking. What is more effective as an influencer of authority to have? The credibility or to have the trappings, looking the part, or the combination of the both? Well, believe it or not, you could, mental shortcut, use authority with very, very strong credibility, i.e., I'm the journalist from the New York Times, or look the part. The problem with looking the part is it may work in the short term, but not the long term. Because the more someone learns or thinks and realizes what he or she is saying is not really all that good or strong advice, then guess what? The looking the part is not enough. The looking the part can help. It's a short-term technique. Those who have very strong credibility and also happen to look the part, well, guess what? That's the best. But if you only look the part, it's still going to work in the short term. If you have credibility, then guess what? That's going to work in the short term and the long term. I hope you enjoyed authority. Authority, as you saw in my ranking from last week, very solid. We have one more module. It is, what is it? Scarcity. Scarcity, I know a reciprocity I ranked as 1. Scarcity is just so powerful. It's so real. It's so useful. Read that one. All right? If you have any questions, shoot me an email, okay? Thanks.